Welcome to the Maximize Business Value podcast brought to you by Mastery Partners, where our mission is to equip business owners like you to maximize your business value and achieve the exit of your dreams, whatever that means to you. With insights gained from over 100 business transactions, we share real-world strategies, lessons, and expert advice to help you build long-term, sustainable value in your business. Each episode is hosted by one of our Mastery certified partners. They're seasoned experts who've helped countless business owners navigate the complexities of growth, scaling, and building value. They bring first-hand experience, actionable insights, and a passion for helping you build a business that thrives. So let's dive in.
This episode is the second of a two-part release. To hear part one, follow the link below. Thank you for listening to the Maximize Business Value podcast.
I imagine with a public company, you're somewhat restricted as to some of the things that you can do.
Yes, because you get into insider information and the
Yep.
use of insider information.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you ought to be pushing those limits of communication down to the working level, particularly the key metrics that you're having. Everybody in the company deserves to know, are we doing well or not doing well?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, remember, in a public company, you're reporting your financials every quarter. So it's public knowledge as to how you're doing financially.
Yeah. And particularly if you've got employees that are also stockholders, the shareholders, then they also, they get shareholder reports like everyone else. And so
Right.
they have a good visibility into that. One of the things that's always fascinated me is the concept of governance and how that's applied. And there's a different I think there's a different connotation of governance in a public company as opposed to a privately held company or closely held private company. So what's been your experience in that area of governance, and how does that apply?
Well, for my public company, I uh, I have fortunate to have a very experienced board of directors
Mm.
that I was able to rely on to put together our strategies and discuss our performance and discuss our corrective actions in a unique way. Often, and it happens a lot in bigger companies. I don't know if you've ever been to some couple week course or whatever it is at Harvard, where they talk about case studies and they talk about early days of a Hewlett Packard board and all the problems and issues they had of communications and everything. It's amazing that in a public board, your board of directors is really has a lot of power and a lot of control, as opposed, and they represent the shareholders. I mean, typically the shareholder's not on the board. Typically that you have a representation. In a private company, if you do have a governance and a board, typically the owner is the ultimate decision maker, and so the board become a board of advisors, which is a good thing to have, by the way. I'm not not saying that.
Yeah.
But in a public in the forum that I had, I was fortunate to have a very open communication with my board, but my board had a lot of authority. For instance, when we went to sell the company, we set up a set of independent directors that were looking at strategic alternatives, and they went out and looked at what other alternatives do we have besides just selling the company, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
One thing you're always doing as a public board is you're worried about shareholders and activists coming back to you and saying, you should have done this and you should have done that, and why didn't you?
Yep.
So you find yourself covering, all the numbers on the table. So that's what you do.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, and
But in a private company, the same can happen. A lot of times you might have a relative or a son-in-law or a friend or family own the shares, and they may have different expectations. So it's really important that all of that be coordinated with the right level of governance. And that's probably one of the most neglected areas that I see in a lot of private companies, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree, and I've seen it where there's Certainly in family-owned companies, you see all sorts of dynamics, but even in ones where there is an active board, and that's an actual board of directors, not so much a board of advisors. Sometimes in people, if it's an owner-led company, they tend to surround themselves with their friends or people that think the way they think. And to me, that's not as effective a board. You may want somebody, without causing a lot of dissension, you may want someone that has a different level of expertise, different outlook, maybe has served on a public board at some point, so that you can get, I just call it big company advice, even though you're a small company, you know.
Yeah. Three of the people that I had on my board had run, $3 to $5 billion businesses themselves.
That's
And it's
invaluable.
amazing the insights they had and the help of me being a smaller company,
Yep.
uh, what insights they were able to bring to me and help me through the difficult times and thinking
Yep.
through strategic intents.
So I've had the fortunate you've shared with me a little bit about some of the things you did at MicroPack, but can as we work together, a lot of times when we work with business owners, one of the first things we uncover is that they're operating day to day in their eyes just fine, but what's lacking is a document set of procedures and processes. And I know that's kind of a passion of yours. So can you share a little bit what your experience has been, what value that adds?
Yeah, first of all, the common sense answer is that if you're going to sell your company and you're the owner and you're going to hand your company over to a new owner, the valuation of your company becomes much more valuable when the processes and procedures are documented
Yeah.
in a way that they can carry forward. And so many times we try to take shortcuts in that regard. And tribal knowledge is what we rely on. And with the aging of population of workforce, the boarding of next generation of employees, the documentation of processes is critical. Now, I'm not the first one. Everybody would agree with me on this. But think of a manufacturing company that gets ISO certified. It's all about having the documentation
Yes. Yeah.
in place and the procedures in place and validating that you're following those procedures.
Yep.
Now, the procedures could be terrible, but as long as you're following them, you get credit from ISO. The old joke I used to say is, you can have a procedure to jump out of an airplane with a concrete parachute. It's not the best procedure in the world, but it is compliant because you say what you do what you say.
Yeah.
Um,
And your
but
results may vary.
But I think it's not also the processes that you do as an owner is important.
Yeah.
And so I would promote the concept of, your relationship with the bank. To me, is one of those examples of relationships to suppliers and to customers. We at Mastery Partners talk about going on a listening tour.
Yeah.
And I think as any CEO, they should be considering going to their, you'd like top 10, but at least top 5 customers and just listening.
Yeah.
No agenda, no issue.
Yeah.
I've always learned that you're better off when you have an issue with a customer to build a trusted relationship when things are going well, because when things go, sideways, you're able to call that person by name or go visit that person, and
Yeah.
the two of you will work it out. Those little things are very critical to the success. And by the way, a good, intelligent buyer is going to see those kind of things.
Yeah.
Is going to recognize the fact that you have a leadership team that has a culture of customer first and working through the appropriate actions necessary. I think that's what we can do at Mastery Partners is help owners to articulate that and formulate that. And it's amazing the ability to value your company at a higher value when you do that. And by the way, sell it easier because there's a lot more buyers interested when it can be a standalone. So back to your question, if you have the processes and procedures, mostly the procedure, but the processes themselves,
Yeah.
if you have those documented well, then you have a method to execute the business that's scalable and and can be recurring.
Yeah,
And
because
so
yeah, I think
it's
even
almost a no-brainer.
yeah, even if and of course everybody's experience varies. When I sold my company, I they expressed an intent for me to stay with the combined entity, and it's what I wanted to do as well. And I did stay for 4 years after they took over the company. But we did have some very good processes in place, and we were executing on those. In fact, one of the reasons they were interested in us, the company that acquired me, was because of those processes. That in some ways, we were executing better than they were in some key areas, and they wanted our team, and they wanted those processes. They had attached value to that. So, I think sometimes business owners have and I was guilty of this for many years. I had an opinion that I'm not going to spend a lot of money on stuff that's not directly revenue producing, like back end software systems and things like that. They're pretty onerous expense when you're a small company, and you may not be able to attach dollar for dollar revenue to that. But by improving those processes, I think you make the company more valuable, and you certainly make the company run better in the interim, and probably ultimately more profitable and more attractive to somebody that is looking at it, even if they may have their own processes and they may not necessarily keep yours when they absorb your company. If everything's clearly documented and run well, it's going to be easier for them to make that acquisition and change.
David, you're absolutely on target. I just read some articles on supply chain management. And as we all know, with tariffs and price changing and the results of
Pandemics
COVID, and
and
the ability to manage our supply chain with the systems that we need to do that has become critical. I would say, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, 5% of board members said makes the top 20, and now 70%, 75% of board members say it is in the top five. And so
wow.
the reason for that is that you cannot effectively manage your supply chain and the processes that are associated with that, like inventory management example, and buying and indoctrinating a new supplier. How do you prove that that supplier is worthy and can produce
Yeah,
quality product, et
yeah,
cetera? All those processes being documented and as automated as you can get means that you're going to be a much more efficient business. And then when you scale the business, if you want to double the revenue, you've got that foundation in place.
yep,
It's not manual. It's not
yep,
done by spreadsheet and phone calls all the time. It's done by building trusted relationships with your suppliers and understanding, all the KPIs that go with that, and doing that in an automated, systematic way. And it's just one small element
yeah,
of creating a great company, but it's so important. It is
yeah,
so important.
yeah. That's wonderful. That's great advice. Well, I think that anyone that's viewing this podcast has already picked up some value from Mark King, so that's a good thing. But I do
I
have one
hope.
last question. We always ask our guests this, and so really, this is the Maximize Business Value podcast. So what do you define as the one most important thing that a business owner should do to build value in their business?
Oh,
You got to
that's
choose
a
one.
tough question because you can't say one thing without the other.
Yeah,
Um, so I'm a big proponent of the systems we talked about and the documentation and data,
yeah,
having clean, pristine, accurate data. But probably the answer to your question from my experience is, and I'm just going to have to use the word culture. I
yeah.
think that the company that you're creating, you can give it a name, you can say we sell a product, you do certain services, but it's really the people you have in your company that you've created. And what have you created? What is that worth? I learned that when I sold Micropack, the fact that I had built a very strong leadership team, and the culture is what sold the business. They came in and toured my facility and they saw a culture. By the
Yeah.
way, you can see culture when you walk through a facility, you
Yep.
always can.
Yeah.
When I'm as a CEO, I would stop randomly and just talk to one of my employees on the line and say, "Hey, what you doing? Why don't you talk about it a little bit?" I don't have, and sometimes, they'll say anything and do anything, but that's the kind of culture that buyers are looking for. And if you have that in place, you have a leadership team that can run the company without you being there, then your valuation I'm telling you, the valuation goes up incredibly, sometimes double, just because
Yep.
they don't have to worry about managing culture, because culture is a long-term active ingredient into the valuation of a business. And it's about people, and it's about the people you have. And it's
Yep.
not just skills, it's how each other work with each other. Do you have a learning organization, for instance?
Yeah.
Do you have a servant leadership, a heart in regards to the way people work together? Do people want to help each other, or do people want to see people fail? Little things. But when
Yep.
you put all that together, I can make a successful company with good culture, no matter what the product is, and no matter who the customer is. It always comes out on the successful side. So I would say that that's the one thing that is probably the most underestimated valuation to maximize
Yeah. That
valuation.
is a great observation. And you're the first one in my doing this podcast has brought that up or expressed it that way too. There's a lot to talk about financials or talk about owner dependency. Obviously, we've discussed a little bit about that, but culture is so important. And in retrospect, I looked when I sold my company as part of the process, not the direct company that bought me, but the principals of the company that owned that company, like two steps up the line, they stopped by our office, and I knew they were coming in a couple day period. I didn't know exactly when they'd show, but they just stopped by to visit, and we took a walk around. They got to meet a lot of the team members, and later they said that visit was what sealed the deal that they were going to purchase our company.
Yeah. So that's what sealed the deal for me too. The
Yeah,
exact same thing.
yeah,
I was in the process of selling to, whoever wants to buy me, kind of thing. You go through the whole process. Um, when they came in to visit me, I gave them the typical, here's presentate who we are and whatever.
yeah,
But when
sure.
we walked around and talked to the employees,
Yeah,
and that's what sold them on the business.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. Same.
presentable.
They can
The
tell.
first impressions. The
Yeah,
first
they can
impressions. Yeah.
tell, when you're walking around talking to folks, they can tell whether you've done that like every day forever, or if this is the first time you ever went out on the shop floor. You've been up in the ivory tower the rest of the time. So,
Well, there's so much to learn there. I was going to buy a company in Florida. They built sensors, and I took the tour from their president and COO. And I never forget, he was walking around and they were trying to ship something by Friday. And, he was pretending like, he's the authoritative type. And he went up and said, "Hey, you're going to ship on Friday or whatever." And started, kind of pestering the employees like he's in charge, and wanted us to see that he's in charge. And he kind of turned away and started walking away. And I watched the employees, and they just looked at each other and rolled their eyes.
yeah, yeah,
You could see the culture was not there.
yep, yeah. So
So,
telling, so telling. Well, Mark, I can't thank you enough. This is wonderful, and I'm looking forward to you hosting some of these podcasts as well as we bring
yeah,
forward.
I will look forward to that. As an ending statement, I am excited about giving back to help the
Yeah,
small business, particularly small manufacturing business, but any small business, and the owners, to prepare them for the journey they're about to have. And I
yeah,
think that's an exciting time for me, and I'm very excited about it, and
yeah.
very honored, honestly, to participate and give back.
Super. Well, we're blessed to have you. Definitely appreciate it. So, with that, this is the Maximize Business Value podcast, where we give practical advice to business owners that are really serious about building long-term sustainable value in their business. We do one of these podcasts each week, so please make sure you like us, subscribe, and tune in each week. And we look forward to hosting you again. Until we meet next time, I'm Dave Casey signing off. Take care.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Maximize Business Value podcast. I hope today's conversation sparked new ideas on how you can continue driving value in your business. But remember, it's not just about listening. It's about taking massive action. Visit our website, masterypartners.com, for more resources. Grab a copy of any of the books in the Maximize Business Value series on Amazon or via the links below. And don't hesitate to reach out if you want to know how to apply these concepts to your business. So until next time, I'm Tom Bronson, reminding you to relentlessly execute while you maximize business value.